The voice tasted like roots pushing through the soft meat of my brain. You're home now. Stop fighting. Let me soothe the edges. I fought it. God help me, I fought it. We called them hollow howls. Not barks, not growls. Something much older. Sound that remembered when lungs were still gills. When teeth were still roots, pushing blindly through black soil. I heard it through 3 inches of reinforced concrete and 23 years of bad decisions, stacked end to end. Then came the claws, frantic, arithmetic. A hailstorm played backward on rusted tin. A thing that used to be a dog came out of the dark with the kind of speed that only belongs to something that has already died and simply hasn't been told yet. It hit me, belt buckle low, jaws yawning wide enough to swallow moonlight whole. My back met a stack of chemical drums that hadn't moved since the world still had governments. My rifle spun away into the dark like it had somewhere better to be. Got my left arm up. That was all that saved me. The bite closed on the new jacket Jackson shoved at me 2 nights ago. Take it, Herm. Stop looking like a walking target. Ghillie thread and burlap shredded like tissue. Ceramic plates underneath cracked, but held, mostly. Pain detonated anyway, white and perfect, the kind that makes you forget your own name for a second. Something deep in the meat of my forearm tore with a wet pop. The smell was worse than the bite. Spoiled meat left in wet earth. Copper pennies dissolved in vinegar. The electric sting of ozone after lightning crawls across your tongue. Through the PVS 31s, the dog thing looked like someone had developed hell in a dark room. Roots of fur, red filament wires pulsing beneath translucent skin, bracket fungi blooming from its ribs and obscene ivory fans. Pus wept from every seam, glowing faintly the way deep sea things do. I tried to scream. The mask swallowed it whole and gave me back my own recycled breath. Light it up! Jackson, calm even when the world was on fire. The room strobed white. My muzzle flash painted everything in stop-motion horror. The dog's eyes, milk blind and pleading. Black shards of teeth, tongues split into pale rootlets that quested like blind worms tasting the air. Recoil walked the rifle across its skull until the bolt locked open in an empty chamber. The corpse kept biting for another second, maybe 2. Reflex or spite. Hard to tell with things that no longer have souls. Then Liam and Falco were there, hauling the dead weight off me. The body hit the floor with the sound of wet laundry dropped from a 3rd-story window. I scuttled backwards on my ass until the wall ran out of mercy and stopped me cold. My heart was trying to pound and punch its way out through my throat and teeth. Jackson knelt. His plate carrier creaked like old ship rigging. The matte silver command tape on his chest caught the green glow of my tubes. One tiny star I could never unsee. He looked older. Every single day we managed to stay alive. The lines around his eyes started mapping a country that no longer existed. Don't flex that arm, Herm. Let Kale work. Kale was already cutting the sleeve away with trauma shears. Movements precise, almost tender. He never wasted anything. Motion, words, hope. Everything he carried fit in one flat chest pouch the size of a paperback book. He believed in traveling light because he had personally dragged too many men out of too many holes and watched them die under the weight of things that they thought they needed. He peeled the fabric back like skin from a fruit. The bite was ugly. 4 deep punctures, bruising already, the color of spoiled plums. No arterial spray. He smeared something that smelled like pine tar and battery acid across the wounds, pressed a bandage, taped it down with the efficiency of a man who had done this 1,000 times and hated every single one. "I'll keep the arm," he said quietly, and softer, pitched only for Jackson and me. "Tell me the second you feel anything crawling." Jackson gave the short nod. It meant both. "I've got you, and I'm sorry in advance." I laughed. Came out cracked and wet. "One red shirt down, right, boys?" Kale's eyes flicked up. Couldn't see his mouth behind the mask, but I felt the flinch travel through the air between us like a slap. Falco, 19, still growing in his boots in his grief, hovered nearby, clutching his ridiculous backpack like it was the last real thing in the universe. Someone had sharpied "World's Okayest Fire Team" across the flap in shaky block letters. Another patch read, "Born too late to explore the Earth. Born too early to explore the stars. Born just in time to shoot mutant dogs." His knuckles were white on the straps. Kept looking at the corpse, then at me, then at the black hallway we'd come from. Like he was trying to decide which direction death would be coming from next. Liam stood over the body, M250 hanging loose in one hand, the other resting on the shoulder padding worn through to the foam on the right side. The man was built like a bridge, piling, and two as quit. The man was built like a bridge, piling, and twice as quiet. He towed the dog's flank. Something inside it shifted with wet organic click. "Roots are still moving," he said, voice like gravel poured slow into a tumbler. Dennis, third op, still green enough that the fear hadn't calcified into something useful, stood a little apart. His tool roll hung low across his back, like a gunslinger's holster from the old world. He kept staring at the dog, the way a man stares at his own future. "The fuck were they doing down here?" The question came out small, almost polite. Jackson didn't look at him. "Need to know, rookie. You don't." Dennis opened his mouth, thought better, closed it like a trap. I leaned my head against the cool wall and tried to slow my breathing. Pain was bright and clean now. I could ride it. Something colder was pooling in my bones. Slow, patient. Like I'd swallowed ice water that refused to warm. We turned away. The charge went off with a dull crump that punched the air from my lungs. The building shook with the charges, and dust filled the air as metal and cement crashed in a heap. The whines and cries of foul beasts rung across the collapsed entrance. Jackson keyed his throat mic, voice low enough it barely disturbed the dust. "Clear. Call signs." "Kale, good. William, good. Dennis, yeah. Falco, still pretty." Tremor under the joke. "Herman, still breathing." "Vision stands," Jackson said. "HQ wants the mainframe. We get the data, we get out of here. Everything else is a target. Ammo is finite, air is finite, time is finite. Act accordingly." He looked at the corridor we'd collapsed behind us, and then to the left, at the dead end, and into the darkness. Jackson motioned towards it, and we moved. The facility was a warren designed by people who'd stopped believing in exits. Someone, something, had built it to study things that should never have been studied. The rebellion called the architect Lisa. Though no one breathing had ever seen her face. Just the results. We descended. Stairs. More stairs. Then more again, until my thighs burned and the air turned warm and wet and tasted of copper and mushrooms left too long in a fridge. My legs grew heavier with each landing. Told myself it was blood loss. I almost believed it. Halfway down, my vision smeared at the edges like wet paint. I stumbled, Liam caught me by the drag handle on the back of my jacket, lifted me up like a duffel bag. "You good, Herb?" "Peachy," I croaked. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Cale glanced back, his eyes narrowed behind cracked lenses. He and Jackson exchanged a flurry of hand signs, too fast for anyone else to follow. "Data invalid. Seek more samples. Containment failure probable." I pretended I didn't see. At the bottom, the corridor opened into a cathedral of nightmares they had built the whole place around. 3 concentric rings of Faraday shielding, glass observation cells glowing faintly in the center like aquariums for damned souls. The cages were full. Not animals anymore. A deer whose antlers were fiber optic cable pulsing soft bioluminescent blue. Child-sized thing that might once have been human skin replaced by rigid bark, mouth sewn shut with copper wire that twitched like a living thing. Something that looked like a wolf crossed with a server rack LED blinking frantically. They watched us with too many eyes. Some of them wept. Dennis went straight to the central terminal, fingers flying across keys that hadn't been touched by human hands in years. The fans woke with a dragon's roar that rattled my teeth and my skull. Lights flickered on, sodium orange, the color of old bruises. "So much for quiet," Jackson muttered. "Perimeter, single hatch. That's the only way in or out. We hold it until the upload finishes, then we die here if we have to." He didn't say if. He said until. We spread out. I took a knee behind an overturned gurney, rifle up, turning to ignore the way my skin had started to itch in perfect concentric circles around the bite, like something counting down inside me. Then the horde arrived. It wasn't a sound at first, it was a pressure, a sudden drop behind the eyes, the way the air feels seconds before a bomb goes off. Then the galloping, the scraping, the wet dragging of bodies that no longer quite fit inside their own skins. They poured through the hatch in a wave of teeth and root and wire and rot. We opened fire. The noise was biblical. Brass rained like burning hail. The bottleneck bought us 47 seconds of grace. I remember Falco screaming, "I never even got a fucking zero gravity!" And the way his voice cracked in the last word like a child realizing the joke isn't funny anymore. I remember Liam's M250 thundering steadily as a jackhammer, while the belt fed from his pack like an endless metal tongue licked the world clean. I remember Dennis shouting percentages over the din voice climbing higher each number. 63, 71, 79, reaching for the end of the loading screen. I remember the exact moment the pain in my arm stopped. Just stopped. The absence was worse than any agony. Like someone had pulled the plug on gravity inside my bones. My hands moved without permission. The rifle came up on its own, muzzle tracking the heat bloom of Falco's back. No. Inside my skull, something ancient unfolded like a flower made of television static and wet soil. "Hello, Herman." The voice tasted like roots, pushing through the soft meat of my brain. "You're home now. Stop fighting. Let me smooth the edges." I fought it. God help me. I fought it. But the body has its own politics, and mine had already succeeded from the Union. Cale saw first. He always saw first. "Herman, don't!" I ripped my mask off. The air hit my lungs like molten copper poured straight from the crucible. My knees buckled. Something thick and metallic flooded my mouth. I spat blood and something else. Something that moved on its own. When I looked up, they were all staring. I felt the growth spurt across my cheeks, under my eyelids, threading through the meat of my tongue like ivy through cracked stone. My vision split into a dozen new spectrums at once. I saw the heat bloom of their bodies, saw the tiny machines swimming in their blood like silver fish, saw the microscopic grief in Kale's tear ducts. I tried to say I'm sorry. What came out was a sound that belonged to the hollow howls. Kale raised his rifle. His hands shook, only for a second, but I saw it. The burst took me just above the left eye. Darkness rushed in, warm and maternal and final. I never felt the floor. Kale stepped over what was left of me without looking down, grabbed my mags, my grenades, the half-full belt still in my gun. Habit, muscle memory. Grief would come later, if later ever came. The horde kept coming, an ocean of meat and wire and hunger. Dennis screamed, 98%! Jackson laughed, a short, sharp bark he saved for moments when everything had gone exactly according to the worst possible plan. Sometimes it's so bad you just have to laugh. Copy that, kid. Almost there. 99! They couldn't close the blast door. Closing it would cage the signal inside the Faraday rings, and all of this would be for nothing. So they made their last stand in the open. Liam's M250 clicked dry on the last round. He reversed the gun, used it like a club until something with too many joints tore it from his hands and kept coming. Falco went down under a tide of fur and fungus, still screaming punchlines nobody would ever hear again. Dennis climbed on top of the console itself, dual-wielding pistols, tears cutting clean streaks through the blood, and soot on his face. 100%! He roared, voice breaking like glass. HQ has it! We did it! Fuck Lisa! Jackson echoed it, raw and ragged. Fuck Lisa! Kale joined last, quiet, almost reverent, like a prayer he'd been saving to the end. Fuck Lisa! They screamed it together as the wave finally broke across them, teeth and wire and root and rot. The sound of the species devouring its own future, one mouthful at a time. Somewhere, far above, the satellite blinked once, received a burst transmission, and began to wake something that had been sleeping a very long time. Down in the dark, the hollow howls finally went quiet. Mission complete. No extraction. No survivors. Just data drifting upward like ash from a crematorium fire, looking for somewhere soft to land. The facility exhaled once, slow and satisfied, and began to digest what was left. A hand reaching out, pressing against the screen as the data flow commences. The final piece of the weapon, the one thing that can bring down Lisa's network, her own brother.